so you guys will not have to take the copious notes that you may have to on other calls. My name's Amit. As I mentioned earlier, I'm based here in Dallas, Texas, and I'm part of the pre-sale system consulting team here at Quest. So we've had the great privilege of working with our Foglight customers over the years, and one of our mechanisms in doing so is to provide this monthly webcast. So you'll see that this is a common occurrence with our audience. All of these will be archived, or these particular sessions are on a website that I'll share with you a little bit later on. Perhaps you've seen it already, but this is where we archive numerous of these webcasts. We have close to 40 of them, I think, that we've developed over the past few years. So anyways, it's been a great pleasure. And as I mentioned on this slide, this presentation is going to be around configuring your integration with ServiceNow. So we'll talk about what's available out of the box. I'll give you guys an indication on where you can go for your documentation. There's some other material that I'll share with you. There are some things that you can do with professional services, but generally speaking, this is a short presentation that will allow you to get integrated with your ServiceNow instance and be able to see incidents appear within ServiceNow. And if you have any questions, feel free. I've muted all the lines by default, but if you have any questions, just feel free to let us know, and we can go ahead and take those. If you want to ask a question verbally, I would ask you just table that towards the tail end. I have a section in this presentation reserved for questions. If you have something that you want to submit electronically, just go ahead and put it in the WebEx chat, and I'll make sure I take care of those as we see them. All right. Well, let me go ahead and let me share my screen with you guys. That'll probably be the first order of business. So just bear with me here. Just make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Okay, so hopefully you guys see my screen here, but what I wanted to do first was start with the presentation. So let's just talk a little bit about the integration itself and what we have available. So not too long ago, what Quest had done was added some features and functionality within one of the cartridges that comes with your Foglight management server. So you'll notice that there's an integration cartridge, and I'll actually show you where it's located. But within that, you'll see that there are a number of different integration points, and one of which is the ServiceNow API. So what our cartridge, or what this feature set is doing within Foglight, is using that ServiceNow API to create incidents. These are for the alarms that are triggered within Foglight. Now, it's not every single alarm. What I'll show you later in this presentation is how a Foglight service is used to basically broker what type of data or what type of alarms are ultimately funneled into the ServiceNow integration. So it requires some knowledge and some experience building Foglight services, and I'll actually touch on that at a high level here in this next section, and I want to make sure that everybody's refreshed on how to do that. There's actually course material, or actually rather there's a previous Foglight 101 course that my colleague Darren Millett had delivered on building services, so we'll talk about that. And there is some built-in two-way remediation. We'll talk about that. But what we really want to talk about first and foremost is the Foglight services. And what Foglight services really is just it's a logical way of grouping things together in a meaningful way. So ultimately, your goal is to use a Foglight service and its components or contents within other dashboards and reports. And what services actually do is help you filter what you're seeing in the dashboard. So generally speaking, what I will advise a lot of my customers on with services is a lot of customers will ask, well, is there a way for me to group a certain set of infrastructure alarms and have only those alarms go to a specific set of recipients? So what we do is we can set up a service that will only look at certain hosts that are being monitored, and then we can set up some filtering that allows us to route certain alarms to a specific recipient. So in this slide deck, I've given you guys the link to the latest material. And what I'll show you here, let me just switch my screen. So hopefully you guys are seeing the Foglight environment. This is the demo sandbox that our customers usually engage with, or at least some of our customers will engage with. Your service builder is available here under dashboard, so you'll have to be in the expert view. You'll expand on dashboards, and you'll move over here to the service builder. And you'll see that these are 4 services that we've created here within our lab system or within this environment. And it's really straightforward. First thing you do is you create a category. As you can see, these categories are listed here. And then within each of these categories, you'll basically add a component to the service. So as you get more advanced, you can actually create a rule that will allow you to use some coded logic to find specific components that are being monitored. What I usually show customers, the easiest way to understand this is these are different things that are being collected. And each of these, let's just call it points of data, ultimately have some sort of entity or attributes within the Foglight repository. So we're just basically accessing that information. So if I wanted to look within the agent model or the agent portion of that topology, I could search through, and you'll see that it's showing me pretty much every agent that I've set up for monitoring with Foglight. So I have, 51 of these. And then what I can do is I can further subset this list. So let's say I was interested in bringing in some of my Postgres assets. So I'll filter that list, and now you can see I have, and I'll sort these by type. What ends up happening is that you want to look for the one that has the Postgres agent next to it, or the DBSS agent, or you can get very, very specific to a series of metrics that are within that model. So anyways, this is how you would add your components. And what will then happen is you'll see that those components will then appear here, in that listed service. And then it's really up to you, right? At the service level, what you could do, so at this point, you really haven't decided where you want this information to go. You are just sort of bucketing it together, but you have the option here to set up an alarm filter. So for this service, wherever it's used, I have certain alarms filtered within it. So what I'm doing here in this particular use case is I'm filtering for a specific number of backends. These are number of connections that are having a high amount of write percentage. I can go through and I can filter through that particular portion of the model, that agent model, if you will, for the specific things that I want to filter against. So if I wanted to filter on locks, for example, I could select that, include it, or include it only under certain conditions. That means that in this particular case, only fatal and critical deadlocking issues would surface within this service. And Foglight, we give an example of how to use a Groovy script. So if you want to get creative and instead of having to pick through this list, you can go ahead and you could use a Groovy script to help you, pick through and determine which alarms actually appear within that service. So just a little bit about service management. Once you have your alarm filter set up, then you can decide, for example, for this service, where do you want that email to go? You can add your recipients here. So this is sort of how you get started with this concept. It's very, very easy to manage. Now, what we need to do next is concerns ourselves with the integration and synchronization. So, in every ServiceNow instance, there is going to be this URL, right? So here, for example, is my URL. You can see it's this link up here at the top, and I'm logging in as an administrative user. So when I set up the integration with Foglight, what I'm going to do is head over here under administration. We'll go over here to integration. So you see how it's nestled here under integration, and then you have the ServiceNow integration page. So first thing you would do is you would actually wouldn't even see this. You would actually see it has like sort of a the logo or the iconography of ServiceNow. You would click Get Started, and then it would drive you through putting in your URL, editing your credentials. When you click this open, you can edit the credentials for how you would log in. So the first question that usually comes up is, what type of permissions are needed? So this requires an incident manager and the personalized choices roles or privileges within ServiceNow. So however you're connecting Foglight to your ServiceNow instance, just make sure it has this level of permission. The other thing that's important to note is that the synchronization occurs every 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do here, and I actually forgot to do this. I should have. This is one of the first things I wanted to do. So bear with me here, but I wanted to take some actions here. There it is. That's where I want it to be. Give me 1 second. Let me go back to this page here. Let's just take a look at what's out there. So what I wanted to do at the beginning of this meeting was just show you some of the remediation. So for example, because I have the integration set up, it's synchronizing every 15 minutes, and it's basically telling ServiceNow that these alarms have occurred. So ultimately, what I'm doing here with the synchronization is I'm telling ServiceNow which of these services I want integrated, which of these Foglight services I want synchronized to ServiceNow. And in a moment, let me just do one other thing here while I complete this for you guys. So I'm going to let's take 1004, this one here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close, and I'm simply going to update. So it's basically now it's been updated, and it's no longer in my roster of active incidents. So hopefully in the later on this demo, it usually takes 15 minutes, but it could lob off a little earlier. We should see 1004 remove off of this list. And ultimately, when we look back at that alarm, what will happen is we'll see that it will be cleared. It'll show that it's cleared. So we'll come back to this in a second. But how does the synchronization occur? So once you have it connected to your ServiceNow instance, what you would do is you would click these buttons here to either enable or disable the synchronization. It's really as easy as that. You just click it off, click it on. You would also set up some further actions here. So as I mentioned here in this slide, you could also categorize and group the actions that take place. So that's where these fields are useful. So I can go through this list, for example, and I can query what's known inside of ServiceNow, and I can pick a group, and I can pick a user, and I can pick a category and make that assignment. And then that ultimately gets updated every 15 minutes or so. And then you would just click save. That's pretty much it. So one other thing that you'll want to note too is there's some filtering that happens here as well. So not every one of the Postgres alarms or whatever that's defined in these Foglight services actually go into ServiceNow. So there is some extra filtering you can do here too. So when I click on this, for example, this is telling me that only one alert is going to be synchronized with ServiceNow from this particular group. That's why when I click open this list, it's only showing me things related to that. And you see how 1004 lobbed off? So if we go back and we look at, let's go back here real quick. There's 1004. Let's see here. You see that? That was the last time it was cleared. There should be another instance of this, but nonetheless, you saw that item basically got lobbed off of that list. So in other words, what it essentially did was it cleared that particular alarm. And that's how you see the integration taking place. And then the other thing that would happen is, give me a second. So the other thing that would happen, we saw this earlier. Let me see what may have happened here. Let me just resave these settings. I'm looking for my incidents here. But there was an incident earlier that showed that it was canceled. It wasn't necessarily closed. So what happens in those particular cases, let me come back here and show you. So if I come back into ServiceNow, and let's say that I refilter this. So this is one that I had canceled recently. What will end up happening is that particular alarm will end up showing as acknowledged. So you can see this test DB offline unavailable. If I come back into, and I apologize, I'm not sure why this view, for whatever reason, it's not synchronizing and showing me that information. There must have been something severed with the connection when I paused these. But what would happen is that incident state for this incident here, 1008, that would end up, that would actually end up being, it would say basically canceled. But then when I actually click into the alarm itself, let me see if I can find it. Let me find it in a different place, but it'll actually show as acknowledged. Give me 1 second. We go back a couple of days because I think that incident was raised a few days earlier. Yeah, you know, there's so many instances of this. So what ends up happening is you got to know which specific alarm is correlating to it. Let me see if I can come back into this list and see if it opens up. Yeah, see, I'm having a rendering issue because I saw it briefly open there, but you'll have to take my word for it. What it ends up happening is this. I have it in my screenshot here, but it'll look like this. And then what ends up happening is, let me see if I have a screenshot of this. I don't think I collected that. Oh, there it is. So you could see here, when you set the remediation, what happens is as I chose to do it in ServiceNow with 1008, I canceled it, right? So what ended up happening was it acknowledged the alarm, and you could see it's acknowledged, but it hasn't been cleared. So in other words, you canceling something in ServiceNow is simply going to tell the Foglight user it has been looked at, and it's no longer an issue. And then you as a Foglight user can decide whether or not you clear it or not. So those are basically the two remediations that have been built in. One is if you close something in ServiceNow, right? So we're back in ServiceNow, and let's say we go to something else, right? So let's go back to my opened. So here's all my open cases. And if I go back to any of these others, actually, I just picked a closed one. Maybe pick something else. And I choose to close it. What that does is it clears the alarm in Foglight. And if I cancel it, it acknowledges the alarm in Foglight. And that's pretty much it as far as you know, understanding how this integration works. And then if you have any feedback for this you know, particular course, you could certainly click on this. Actually, there's a QR code in here as well. You can take a picture of this. Otherwise, what we can do is I'll paste the link here for this in the chat, and you guys can go ahead and fill out that survey as well and let us know how we did on this. The reference material. So this link here, it takes you to this page within the Foglight for Integrations documentation. So I'm referencing the 596 documentation. So you'll see that in the PowerPoint as well. And then for those of you guys that are interested in more integration help, or perhaps you know, more of a bona fide offering than what you've seen out of the box, Quest does offer a ServiceNow integrations pack. And I've provided a link to this as well. And there are much more thought out integrations. You can see that it's much more set up for things happening two-way between the two solutions. But ultimately, it will address more use cases in the two remediations that you've seen earlier. So with that being said, I'd like to open up the forum and see if you guys have any questions or comments, anything at all that I can assist with. And you'll have to unmute your line to do so. And I'm going to go ahead and check to see if. So the question we got in the chat, this was from Donna. Donna asks, does this use the BPPM msend.exe to create the tickets in MTE. I don't think so. From what I understand, these are making calls using the ServiceNow API. So I would imagine it's some sort of API call that could be done essentially through REST. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know for a fact that we're exploiting the ServiceNow API to do that. Any other questions that I can answer or address, either verbally or over on the in the chat? Okay. Well, just to recap, make sure you have your services set up. That's very important. That's going to be available here in the service builder down below. It's always important to group things there. Make sure that your filtering is wide enough so if there is a possibility for an alarm to surface or create an incident in ServiceNow, then you know that it's part of your Foglight service. Once that's been set up, your next thing to do is gather your instance details for ServiceNow. Head over here under administration. Go ahead and plug in your general settings. Make sure that that's been enabled. You'll get a connected item up here. And then what you'll do is then start deciding which items get synchronized. And it's just a matter of, turning things on and saving. And then at some point, you will then need to decide what type of alarms actually get filtered into incidents in ServiceNow. So there's that opportunity to do the second layer of filtering. And if you want to do any type of an action such as group or user assignments or categorizations, you can do that. And then lastly, the remediations, as I mentioned, that are built in. Close will simply clear the Foglight alarm, and then cancel will acknowledge the alarm in Foglight. All right, well, thank you for your time today. If there are no further questions, hope this was valuable. Let me see. I think there might be a couple more. Actually, one other. How much does the ServiceNow integration package cost? That I don't know. So what I would do is contact your nearest sales representative within your region. You could certainly contact either Mary Elizabeth or even anybody at Quest, and they can revert to you, with the right person to speak with. But that would more than likely be someone in professional services. As far as what we've seen today out of the box, that comes with your Foglight license. So it's built into the Foglight management server. Any other questions that I could address? Okay. Well, without further ado, thank you for your time today, and I wish you well. And let us know how we can improve this feature out of the box. So if you have any questions on enhancements or things of that nature, you can go ahead and submit those to Quest technical support team, and we'd be happy to evaluate those for you guys. Have a great day, everybody.